Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm the proud daughter of a Navy combat veteran who served in the Vietnam War. I'm also a grateful American for the freedoms I have the great honor to possess, and I fully respect our country's brave men and women who have fought and those that died so that Americans can be free. I believe that in order to achieve world peace, America must have the strongest military in the world, but only cautiously use our tremendous force when our national security is threatened. In recent years, we have seen our great military and those that serve our country be used too often for the defense of foreign nations. And we have far too many veterans today who suffer physically and mentally from the foreign wars they were sent to fight. And we have seen too many American flag-draped caskets return home to grieving families, while our troops are not yet on the ground in Ukraine, fighting to defend another country's border that is not our own. Most Americans fear that could soon be the case because they know Washington's bloodlust for war is an addiction that seems almost impossible to be undone. And while Americans struggle with the record high inflation caused by failed government policies, many hardworking Americans can barely pay their bills. After decades of America-last policies that has built up other countries' economies while destroying American manufacturing, sending our jobs overseas, and crippling the middle class, creating the massive divide between the rich and the poor, Americans no longer want to pay for and go fight Washington's forever foreign wars. Yet, disconnected from the will of Americans just over a year ago, Congress voted to send $113 billion to Ukraine, a sum of money that is approximately 10 times the cost of building our own border wall. But today we are debating the National Defense Authorization Act that contains even more money to be sent to Ukraine, while the $113 billion already authorized has not yet even been spent. The amendment I'm offering today will pull the $300 million in the funding to Ukraine from the National Defense Authorization Act. The National Defense Authorization Act is one of the most important funding bills that Congress passes year after year. This is the funding of our nation's defense. This is the funding for the Department of Defense. This is the funding for the good men and women who serve in our military. The Department of Defense website makes its mission clear. It says that its mission is to deter war and protect our nation's national security. With the Department of Defense mission being very clear in stating what the mission is, no money funding and fueling the Ukraine war belongs in our National Defense Authorization Act, because this is for our nation, not for another nation, not for Ukraine. Ukraine is not the 51st state. Sending money to fund a war in a foreign country does not deter war. It continues it, it causes it, it enables it, and it allows it. Sending money to fund a war in a foreign country against a nuclear-armed nation does not protect our national security. It endangers our national security. It endangers every single American. It endangers the entire world. We do not want World War III. I rise today to encourage all of my colleagues to consider that they can pass another funding bill to fund money going to Ukraine without it being in our National Defense Authorization Act. And I ask my colleagues and urge my colleagues to vote yes on this amendment. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I reserve.
For what purpose does the gentlewoman